Did you know there's over 10,000 species of worms? If you're wanting to get into vermicomposting or composting with worms, you might be wondering, which kind should I get to add to my compost bin? I'm going to break down the major types of worms and show you 3 of the best species to add to your compost bin. Most worms fall into one of 3 types. There are Anecic, Endogeic, and Epigeic. Starting at the bottom, we have Anecic, which are the deep core drillers of the worm world. Their name means out of the earth, and they can burrow as far as 6 feet down. Their burrows tend to be vertical, and so they're better used for aerating the soil around your trees than they are in a compost bin. Next, we have the Endogeic worms, which means within the earth. These guys stay much closer to the surface than the Anecic worms. They like to build shallow, horizontal burrows, and they stay much closer to the surface. But they do still prefer to be in the soil than on top of it. Finally, we have the Epigeic, or on-the-earth worms. These are the guys that you want for your compost bin, because they don't make burrows into the soil. They prefer to live on the earth, in the decaying organic matter on the surface. They're the fastest of worms because they can't hide in their burrows. So if you see a worm that's on the surface in a bunch of leaves, chances are it's an epigeic worm. And that's the kind of worm that you want to put in your compost bin to turn those leaves into worm castings and nutrients for your plants. There are a bunch of different species of epigeic worms that you can use in your composting bin. And I'm going to show you 3 of the most popular that I use in my own. The first is known by several different names, including the manure worm, the branding worm, the tiger worm, but the name I hear most often is the red wiggler. See if we can find a couple of those in here. Oh, here's one. See him wiggling away. So the red wiggler is one of the most popular types of composting worms. Of course, they're reddish in color, and they can get 3 to 4 inches long, and they can live up to 5 years. Here's a fun fact. The name in Latin for the red wiggler is Icenia fetida. I don't speak Latin, so pardon me if I'm wrong there. Whoa, it's really wiggling. And I may have just triggered what I'm about to talk about, because the name fetida means foul smelling in Latin, because they exude a pungent liquid when they're handled too roughly. So be gentle with those guys and don't make them wiggle around like I just did. The next worm in my bin is called the Dendrobana hortensis, or the European nightcrawler. These guys are bigger than the red wigglers. Right now I think the ones in my bin are just fatter, not quite longer yet. See if we can find 1 or 2 of those. There we go. I think that's one of them. There you go. So he's a bit fatter than the red wiggler, but they will get longer as well, up to 6 inches long. So they're often a bluish gray or a pinkish gray color. And finally, let's see if I can find the tiny one in here. All right, I finally found a sample of the last one, which is the Perionyx excavatus, more commonly known as the blue worm. You can see he's super tiny there in my hand. He's tiny because they reproduce quickly. They make a bunch of new worms fast. They make excellent castings, but they don't do well in colder weather. Now here in Tucson, that won't be a problem. So if you live in a colder climate, you may want to avoid them, but the blue worm is the third of my 3 worms, in addition to the European nightcrawler and the red wiggler. So there you have it, the 3 major types of worms and the 3 best species to get if you want to start your own worm composting bin. Subscribe to the channel to learn more as I dig deeper into this world myself.